Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and in this one, we're going to be talking about Blackest Night, which is where they brought in the Black Lantern Corps, which was undead. It was a zombie story. And then because we do Marvel and DC, we also ran then Marvel Zombies at the same time. We said it was all this massive zombie outbreak. And I'll be really honest with you, it basically destroyed our game world. Uh, the heroes lost big time. Almost everybody died. Stuff really hit the fan when we ran this back in, I want to say it was 2009. 2009, by the way, good God, was like the worst year of my life. Um, my grandma, who had raised me, like my mom died when I was young, and my grandma was kind of like a second mother to me. She died at this time. My best friend, Dave Eckelberger, took his own life at this time. On Thanksgiving morning, I went to go pick up my father-in-law to bring him to Thanksgiving dinner, and he had died. We found him on Thanksgiving morning. And good Lord, man. And like it all hit. I mean, all this stuff happened within maybe 3 months of each other or something. You know what I mean? Like it was just such a bad year. And normally, for me personally, I'm really big into escapism. And like if my life sucks, I want to be able to play the role-playing game. I want it to be kind of happy or funny or something, Give me something positive in my life, even if it's just a game, right? And boy, this year was just relentless or whatever. Um, so the basic gist, I could really put this in a nutshell for you. People die, they come back as Black Lanterns. All the people in cemeteries and stuff like that come back as Black Lanterns, right? So it's just like a invasion of the undead on a cosmic scale. And the Black Lanterns fight the living and win. The Black Lanterns win. My channel's been around for a while. I still have a bunch of old videos on my channel, and I just made them private. But I had gone through every step of Blackest Night. I think it was like 1 October I did this. And I just did everything. So it was like zombie Cyclops, because, like, for instance, Apocalypse in our world killed Cyclops on Y2K. So like zombie Cyclops comes back and he's fighting um like Warren Worthington and stuff like that and kills him, and so on and so forth. And then it was like, okay, so it was, Black Lantern Archangel versus Nightcrawler or whoever, right? And I broke it down, and like I don't know how to put this into words, but you could, like, the depression associated with this event just sort of like radiated off of my channel. And I actually think it was one of the big reasons why my channel did not grow for the first several years that I was on YouTube. People would discover my channel, and I had labeled everything like episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. And they would get up to Blackest Night, and it was just like hitting a wall, and they hated it. And we hated it too, by the way. Um, but one of the big things that would happen in the comics is they would just do a thing like in the comics they had killed the Golden Age Superman. And at this point in our timeline, we kind of had to, for, a little different than the way they did it, but he was gone. So in both cases, the Golden Age Supermen come back as Black Lanterns, right? Well, so in the comics, it'll be something like Black Lantern, Superman, like Jimmy Olsen goes to like the broom closet where Superman used to change his clothes from Clark Kent into Superman or whatever. And there'll be like zombie Superman in there or whatever. And so Jimmy will do something stupid like knock over a broom, and like that gives him a second to run away because the writer said so, right? Whatever you want to call that. Plot armor, plot convenience, whatever, right? That doesn't exist in a role-playing game. We had none of that whatsoever. So we had a Superman with a strength of 50 just hunting down supporting cast guys who were like had a strength of 2. It was completely one-sided. Um I can't remember which character we were using now, but I remember reading it in the comic, and it was like not a powerful character at all. And he beats like 2 or 3 Black Lanterns that were like heavy hitters. And I don't know, because like I said, it's kind of why I mentioned everything I was going through in 2009. I think that I was kind of compromised myself in real life in some of the mental stuff that I normally do before I run an adventure was not happening, you know? I just had this kind of like blind faith that things were going to turn out somehow, and they did not. Um, but I remember running that same scenario and the Black Lantern just stomped it. And it was like he was some character that was supposed to be then a big deal for the rest of this event. And for us, he basically died on page 1, you know? And so like right away it goes south. And so I went off script and I started doing stuff that had nothing at all to do with the comics. And one of the things I did was I had the Joker show up. And I'm a big fan of the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman movie. And one of the things they say in that movie is that the Joker's specialties are chemistry and art. And so, because the chemistry part, because we were doing zombie stuff and we weren't just doing um, just Blackest Night, like I said, we were also doing Marvel zombies and stuff like that. So, I ran this adventure because this was not a single adventure. This was like a ton of adventures we ran where things just kept getting worse and worse. But at one point, really early on, the Joker goes to Axis Chemicals and he starts to manufacture trioxin. And the first, um, well, no, it wouldn't be the first. It would actually, I guess, be the third horror movie that I ever saw was Return of the Living Dead. And trioxin is a chemical they mention in that series that reanimates cadavers and stuff like that. So we had the Joker make some, and Harley Quinn actually shows up and tries to fight Zombie Joker at Axis Chemicals. And things go really bad for Harley. And I really, really, really did not want to see her become a zombie. Spoiler, she does not. She actually makes it out. Very, very close, though. And just as he's getting ready to get her, my wife was playing a character named Collateral Damage. And her alter ego was Colette DiMaggio. And I can't remember if that was the first game we ran or not. I know for sure it was early on, but I can't remember if we'd done anything else first because we might have done something else. Because the main villain in this, by the way, is Necron. And if you follow my channel, up until this point in our game, there's an argument to be had that Necron was our main villain in our game. So that was interesting. Like we had made him kind of the main villain in our game long before Blackest Night was a thing at all, like 15 years before. So that was interesting. And so when Blackest Night hit, all my friends were contacting me. I don't know if that would have been Facebook or if it was still MySpace or what. It was kind of like right there, I think, on when everybody kind of switched over from one to the other. But at any rate, like everybody reached out to me. I was like, oh my God, did you hear like Necron is a thing? Like Necron's like a big deal, man. So point being though, so we might have done something with that first, but this Colette DiMaggio thing, collateral damage, was very, very early on, and she sort of in our thing then becomes kind of the main character. And so she fights Zombie Joker. And my wife and I, when we were sitting down to discuss the character and what she could and could not do and stuff like that, we didn't actually use the rules of DC Heroes. I said, I understand the concepts. I don't particularly need to do the rules for certain things. And if we just agree on how this works, that's all we need. And so what we agreed upon, it's sort of similar. I think early on in the planning process, we were going to give her a power from the book called damage transference. Um, and so the idea with damage transference is if something somewhere takes damage, in that very moment, you switch what the object is that takes damage. So it could be like, let's say a sentinel punches Colossus. The instant that the sentinel's big purple fist makes contact with Colossus, you could choose some other object in the vicinity, like let's say Juggernaut's helmet. And it would be like Colossus takes no damage, Juggernaut's helmet takes 100% of the damage from that blow. Right? That's how the power is supposed to work. So we changed it. We were like inspired by that, but we changed it. And what we came up with was this idea that Colette DiMaggio could do something like jump off of the top of a building. And when she hits the ground and does a superhero landing, all the damage that she should have taken, now she is containing those APs of damage, right? So she can just land on the ground, do a superhero landing. She takes no damage herself. Nothing else takes damage, though, this round either, because she's hanging on to it for a second. Then she goes up to something else, like a bad guy or something, and punches him. And then the instant her fist touches his jaw, he takes all that damage that you would normally take from jumping off of a skyscraper and hitting the ground, right? That was how her stuff worked. So, mind you, the beautiful thing about the Colette DiMaggio character was if I was running a street level campaign, because if you forget about her power for a minute, it's basically her mutant power. If you forget about her power for a minute, her stats were basically the same as what you'd see with a character like Batgirl. So, like, she was good at gymnastics and, she had some martial arts skills and some stuff like that. She was sort of a tomboy who was kind of plucky and could figure things out. She was like low level adventurous, you know what I mean? But then, like, so if she's in a street level campaign, certainly her attributes and skills and stuff are not dominating the campaign or anything, right? She fits in just great there. And then if somebody does something like they shoot her with a pistol, which is, I don't know, I don't have it in front of me right now. It's something like 5 APs of damage. Guns are like really piddly in DC Heroes. But at any rate, so she would have like 5 APs of damage and she could go up and like slap somebody, like pistol whip them, you know, and do like have a 5 AP damage slap then. So you get the gist, right? That was how the character worked. So she fights Black Lantern Joker, and I couldn't tell you now. I don't have the stats in front of me. We used the Joker's character sheet and said, well, that's however many APs of willpower he is, that's how many APs of force manipulation he has then. So he hits her. with this black force manipulation. Let's say it's 10 APs just for an arbitrary number. So then she would have 10 APs of damage she could hit him back with, you know. So she beat him. She actually beat Black Lantern Joker. Um, but then the problem was after she would leave, his corpse would get up again. Even if you took the black ring away, there's now like acid rain basically in Gotham City that has this trioxin in it because Axis Chemicals, the green smoke going up in the air has seeded all the clouds and it's turning everybody in Gotham into zombies pretty much. Um, so she, that was one of her concerns is at this point, because early on she's like, I'm just immune to damage. If you try to hurt me, then I'll just slap you back or whatever, right? And ha ha ha, I'm immune to damage. Well, as soon as she starts to realize what's going on with the rain, she takes cover in a school bus and is freaking out. And she's like, oh my God, like, what do I do? And then zombies start to gather around the school bus. And she starts thinking, like, well, crap, are they wet with this rain? If they're just touching me to even activate my powers or whatever, like, because she didn't have systemic antidote, which is what saves you from things like disease and stuff like that, right? So she's like, well, crap, like, can I still be infected? Maybe I'm not nearly as invulnerable as I thought I was. And that's something I like to do, by the way, is take a character who has kind of a big head for some reason and then kind of throw something at them that they're like, oh crap, I didn't even think of that. So that was like a nice story beat, I thought. So a John Redbridge shows up, and he's like one of many John Redbridges, and we kind of talked about that before. And by the way, at this point in our story now, all the John Redbridges have been getting power rings. And so we have now seen a John Redbridge for like every color of power ring there is now except for black. Um there was a red one who became a blue one. One of them has the orange one at this point. There was a yellow guy fighting a green guy. The green guy became a purple guy, guy, so on and so forth, right? So we've seen all the colors, but all the John Redbridges are doing ring stuff at this point. And so one of them shows up and then he saves her from this school bus using his power ring so that there's a force field between them and the zombies. And then when they exit the back of the bus, they just kind of burst through it and go out that emergency door. Then the rain is going off of the energy force field thing. They fall back. They end up going to Las Vegas of all places, and then uh, collateral damage kind of stays in the Las Vegas area after that for quite a while, actually. But I'm getting a little off topic. But the point is, the various characters are dealing with all this stuff going on, and we just did kind of like what I said with the X-Men thing, we would have something like uh this member of the Justice League fights this guy over here who's like the zombie version of his predecessor, things like that. The zombie wins. And then part of that too is, let's say we're talking about like a zombie Flash or something like that. When they fight another speedster, even if you were to assume they had the same level of speed, which by the way, the older characters typically are more powerful. Like a pre-crisis Superman is, for instance, stronger than like a John Byrne Man of Steel Superman, right? So at any rate, the older guys are kind of more powerful anyways. And then on top of that, they can do all this lantern stuff too. So that was kind of the gist of Blackest Night, was it was a whole lot of like the old Hawkman, who was Katar Hall, who's Black Lantern, Katar Hall. he would attack guys like what was the guy's name? Fel Andar, I think, is the later Hawkman we were using in our game. And then he would turn that guy into a zombie Hawkman, you know. Oh, and then I left this out. Not only did we have Clark Kent, pre-crisis Superman, comes back as a Black Lantern, and our new Superman is his son, right? The 1980s Superboy. And he makes it through. Amazingly enough, he makes it through. And one of the things that helped him with that was, if you've been following the channel, you know, for a while he was training Green Lantern recruits. And he got very upset because the young guys that he had trained, a bunch of them get taken out by zombies. So he's like really, really upset about that. And so he gets a Green Lantern ring in the process, though. That's the bottom line. And so we had kind of set this up, you know, years earlier in the game, that he was really, really good when it comes to using a Green Lantern ring. And he knew all these tricks, like I want to substitute Omni Power for Power Reserve, which fuels my willpower, which in turn pumps up my Omni Power, which gives me more Power Reserve, which gives me more willpower, you know. And then he would do this thing where he would kind of charge up and go like Super Saiyan and then release like just a massive green blast. You know, he had a lot of tricks like that. So that's why he makes it through, you know, but he had to fight his dad, which sucks. Um, and then he had to fight his brothers. So like the uh Clark's oldest son was Clark Jr., who was our John Byrne inspired Man of Steel style Superman, right? Who died fighting Doomsday. So now he's back. All these characters come back, by the way. So Bruce Wayne is back. Bruce Wayne Jr. is back. Dick Grayson is back. Um, you know, so on and so forth, right? But like with the Superman, not only do you have to deal with a pre-crisis Superman in the form of Clark Kent, his oldest son, like I said, was Clark Jr., right? And if you go through in chronological order in DC Comics, the times when Lois Lane became Superwoman. So Clark Jr. would have been born before she became Superwoman, right? Before she had powers. So the irony is then, because the John Byrne Superman was weaker, that's why we had him be that guy, right? It was a good fit for kind of that period in the history of DC Comics when they gave us a weak Superman. But the irony is, in our game, after she becomes Superwoman and has the same powers as Superman, basically, is when she has a bunch of other kids. And she had like 10 sons or something, right? Like we mentioned Larry, that there were these old comics where Lois and Clark had these twins named Larry and Carol, right? They show up a lot. So my brother-in-law Scott had played Larry, and now at this point in the timeline, he's dead. So Larry comes back as a Black Lantern, and he is just as tough as his dad is because both parents had powers when he was conceived and born, right? So we just were using Superman's character sheet for Larry. Uh, Not only that, though, they had cloned Larry like a zillion times. And we mentioned that before, so that Scott was playing these characters, the LB series of clones, and they would degrade and become bizarros, and then ultimately they would die. They were getting in these fights and they kept dying, and Scott's like, well, that's fine. If you killed LB 426, I'll just come back as LB 427, you know? And he was going through characters left and right. Like almost every game session, another one of these guys would die. All those guys show up as Black Lanterns. And at that point, we were like, you know what? It, if I was Necron, I would go to where Krypton exploded. And I would just have all the Kryptonians be Black Lanterns. Because why wouldn't you? Because the Black Ring doesn't even need a body. The Black Ring we saw multiple times in the comics If there are just atoms, all it needs is an atom or whatever, or a molecule or something. If there's the tiniest little speck of you in space, that is enough for it to grow a new body out of that piece, right? And as soon as the the zombie Kryptonians come to Earth and are exposed to yellow sun radiation, they're just a massive problem. It would just everything kept getting worse. Everything kept getting bigger, you know what I mean? And nobody really knew what to do about it. And this all leads to Brightest Day, which is happy. Um, it doesn't fix every single thing that happened in Blackest Night, but it is for sure not the dark story that Blackest Night was. So I apologize that I'm ending on a downer with this one. Um, Tomorrow I'll do Brightest Day, and that should not be a downer. But I'm gonna call it quits for this. I hope you guys thought this was interesting. If so, as always, if you want to support our channel, smash that like button. Uh, Make sure you're still subscribed and leave us a comment. And from all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll catch you in the next adventure.